I was 2 when the world tilted. A leaking gas cylinder sparked an explosion that swallowed my mother's car in seconds. They said she died instantly, but I swore I heard her voice in my dreams for years. My father remarried quickly, too quickly. Her name was Gladys, and she had a daughter my age named Pamela. At first, I thought I'd gain a new family, but it didn't take long before things changed. Gladys didn't like how my father smiled at me. She said I was too quiet, too smart, too obedient. She saw me as a threat. Slowly, she poisoned my father against me. I learned to live in silence, excelling only to survive. But somewhere deep down, I believed love would find me, real love. I dreamed of a man who'd see me, choose me. I didn't know that man would first come to me in rags, asking for 3,000 Nigerian Nairas to eat. And I didn't know I'd meet him again when my world fell apart completely. But it didn't happen immediately. I met Jai during my NYSC, tall, confident, and ridiculously charming. He called me Sunshine the first day we met. I blushed like a teenager. For once, someone looked at me like I was enough. He proposed 2 years later with my father's reluctant blessing. Gladys faked a smile. Pamela didn't even bother. "You sure he wants you?" she whispered once. I ignored her. I was getting married. I had won. But life has a cruel sense of humor. One evening after my bridal gown fitting, I went to Jai's apartment unannounced. The door wasn't locked. I walked in to find Pamela, my stepsister, wearing one of my lace wrappers and feeding Jai suya. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. They froze. Then Pamela laughed. "Oh, didn't he tell you? We're getting married instead." I thought it was a joke. Until Jai stood and said, "I didn't know how to tell you. Pamela and I, well, it just happened." My chest caved in. The betrayal pierced like a hot blade. My half-sister and my own fiancé. That night, I cried for the little girl I used to be, the one who believed love would rescue her. I had no idea rescue was already on the way. I stayed up all night. My grandmother, Mama Nika, was the only one who didn't call me foolish. She was 86, with shaky legs and sharp eyes. "Marry someone with sense," she said, "not someone with swagger." That morning, she held my hands and said, "Before I die, let me see you in a wedding gown." That promise haunted me. I wasn't about to walk down the aisle with just anyone, until Kingston's message came. "I owe you my life," it read. I didn't recognize the number. Then came the memory. 5 years ago, a rain-soaked man outside the Umuahia market. He asked for 3,000 Nigerian Nairas. Everyone insulted him. I gave him 500 Nigerian Nairas. "God will reward you," he said. Now he was back, asking for nothing, just offering support. I met him at a quiet cafe. He looked different, clean-cut, soft-spoken, gentle. "Let me help," he said. I laughed. "Help me marry a ghost?" His eyes locked on mine. "Let me marry you." I blinked. "Is this a joke?" He shook his head. "Let your grandmother have her joy. Let your enemies eat dust." My heart pounded. It made no sense. But something in me said, this stranger might be the only real thing left. The wedding was small, barely 30 people. My father protested, called it embarrassing. "Who is this Kingston?" he shouted. "Where's his family? His job?" Gladys added, "We won't support a beggar marriage." Pamela smirked, still wearing the ring Jide gave her. Mama Nika came in a wheelchair, dressed in coral beads, beaming like she'd just won a lottery. "My daughter's wedding is not for pigs to enjoy," she snapped. "Go stay, but don't insult my joy." That shut everyone up. Kingston wore a simple brown kaftan, smiled throughout and ignored every sneer. Even Jide came uninvited. He walked up to Kingston and said, "Enjoy her. She's a handful." Kingston simply smiled and replied, "Thanks. You told me what not to be." I watched it all in disbelief. Kingston didn't react to insults. He didn't show anger. He just held my hand like it was the only thing that mattered. No money, no gifts, no fanfare, just peace. It was almost too quiet to trust. But 2 weeks later, truth exploded like thunder. My ex-fiancé was fired. The stepsister's engagement was cancelled. The house turned upside down. And Kingston? He finally revealed who he really was. The king in disguise had just removed his mask. It started with a letter addressed to Jaid from Kingston Group Nigeria Limited. Your services are no longer needed. That was it. No explanation, just dismissal. Jaid stormed out of the house that morning, furious. I had no idea Kingston owned the entire company. Not a share, not a board seat, the entire thing. Kingston Group was the largest private conglomerate in Umuahia, owning hotels, factories, logistics firms, and even a real estate chain. I found out the day a luxury car rolled into our compound with Kingston's name on the license plate. Ogia say, make I drop this car here, the driver said. My stepmother choked on her Zobo. My father stared, confused. Pamela dropped her phone. Then Kingston walked in. For the first time he wore a suit. He looked nothing like the man they mocked. I kept quiet, he said, because I needed to know who loved me when I had nothing. He turned to me. And you, 5 years ago, gave me 500 Nigerian Nairas when I had less than hope. Then he faced them all. You spat on me, insulted me, but she honored me. Nobody said a word. My enemies were silent, swallowing the shame they tried to serve me. The silence in our sitting room was heavy, like judgment. My father cleared his throat, but Kingston lifted a hand. Sir, you disowned your daughter for having principles. For refusing to sleep her way to a marriage proposal. You mocked her for choosing dignity over desperation. But I came to say thank you for abandoning her. If you hadn't, she'd never have found me again. Gladys tried to smile, but Kingston turned to her and added, Madam, you called me a nobody, but I was the one paying your rent anonymously for the past 2 years because your husband was secretly broke and ashamed. My father's jaw dropped. Gladys gasped. I didn't want you thrown out, Kingston continued. I just wanted to see how low you'd sink. Then he turned to Pamela. You said I wasn't man enough. But remember that job interview you failed last month? I'm the one who signed your rejection letter. Pamela collapsed into the couch, shaking. My heart raced. All the pain I swallowed for years now stood trembling before a man who refused to raise his voice, but dropped truth like grenades. Kingston didn't need revenge. He needed only to remind them who I had always been, priceless. Jeed came back 2 days later, drunk and raving mad. He screamed at our gate, demanding to see the gold digger. Kingston was out of town. I stood at the gate and faced Jaid myself. I chose Pamela for power, he slurred. I thought you were too good. His eyes were bloodshot. Now look at me, fired, humiliated. I lost everything. I didn't flinch. You lost what you never deserved, I replied. You sold your crown for crumbs. He tried to touch me, but the security man Kingston had quietly assigned to me stepped in. One more word, he warned, and you'll spend the night in a cell. Jeed stumbled away, yelling threats. I watched him go, not with anger, but pity. That man once made my world spin. Now he was nothing more than a discarded page. Inside, my stepmother began praying loudly, calling Kingston our son-in-law, sent by Jehovah. Pamela locked herself in the room and refused to eat. My father stayed mostly quiet, perhaps realizing he had bet against the one person who ever loved him unconditionally. As for me, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. No nightmares, just the calm that comes when truth finally wins. 2 weeks later, Kingston returned with a surprise. He took me to see my grandmother, but not at her old house. She was now living in a modern bungalow, complete with a personal nurse, TV subscription, and imported recliner. This is yours, Kingston whispered to her. Your granddaughter saved me when I was invisible. Now I want her to see what legacy looks like. Mama Neka cried uncontrollably. I thought God had forgotten us, she wept. I thought this family had died. I held her tightly. He remembered us, Mama. He remembered us in style. That evening, Kingston knelt and gave her a ring box. With your blessing, I want to marry her again, this time with the world watching. She shouted yes, before I could even respond. My eyes welled up. You mean this wasn't the real wedding? I asked. Kingston smiled. The first was to silence shame. This one will crown your glory. It wasn't just poetic, it was prophetic. The second wedding was set for 3 months later. Every elite in Umuahia got an invite. Mama Neka's name was printed in gold. My father wasn't even listed as next of kin. It was the beginning of a new kingdom, one where I reigned. The second wedding was a spectacle. Helicopters hovered. A list musician sang. The bride, me, wore a custom-made beaded gown flown in from Kenya. My entrance was broadcast on national TV. Kingston stood waiting in a white agbada embroidered with our initials. This time, there was no mocking from my family, only stunned silence. Pamela sat in the back row, wearing a borrowed dress and forced smile. Jude was nowhere to be found. Rumor had it, he left Umuahia, broke and jobless. Gladys tried to hug me, but security blocked her. Invitees only, they said politely. Kingston took the mic. 5 years ago, she gave me 500 Nigerian Nairas. Today I return it with the world. He pulled out a check for 50 million Nigerian Nairas and handed it to Mama Nneka. This is for the matriarch who taught her grace under fire. The hall erupted in applause. I could barely breathe. Was this real? The girl once treated like a burden was now the jewel of the city. And as Kingston kissed me before thousands, I realized something even more precious than wealth had found me. Redemption. Not from rags to riches, but from betrayal to royalty. The kind of story that makes God laugh before he says, "Watch this." Our honeymoon wasn't in Paris or Dubai. Kingston surprised me with something better. We returned to the very spot where I met him 5 years ago. The same Umuahia Market Street, now paved and modern. He had transformed it into the Sunshine Plaza, named after me. This was where I almost gave up, he whispered. And you gave me hope with just 500 Nigerian Nairas? He led me to a monument by the entrance, a bronze statue of a woman handing money to a kneeling man. I gasped. "You did this?" I asked. "No," he smiled. "We did this. Your one act of kindness turned my whole life around." I cried uncontrollably, overwhelmed by the depth of it all. And just when I thought the surprises were over, Kingston showed me a school being built behind the plaza. "Tuition free for girls," he said, "named after your mother, in honor of the woman who raised you through the fire." I hugged him, speechless. This wasn't just a love story. It was a rewriting of destiny. The weeks that followed were like living in a dream I never dared to imagine. Every room in our mansion echoed peace. Kingston remained grounded, no sudden ego, no flashy pride. He prayed with me, cooked breakfast sometimes, and insisted we never lose touch with the simple things. But back in my old neighborhood, Pamela's life unraveled quickly. JD had left a trail of debt in her name. Loan agents began harassing the family. My father sold his car. Gladys started moving from church to church seeking spiritual covering. I watched them from a distance, not with revenge in my heart, but with a sense of closure. You see, true revenge isn't fire and fury. It's peace they can't touch. Kingston offered to help them quietly, but I said no. Let them learn, I said. Maybe then they'll stop planting weeds where flowers grow. Pamela tried to reach out through social media, posting sad quotes and old photos of us as children. But sympathy had dried up. People saw through her now, the girl who stole her sister's fiancé and lost him to karma. Meanwhile, I sat with my grandmother, feeding her fried fish as she watched her favorite Nollywood dramas in air-conditioned bliss. Months later, I woke up to nausea. Kingston panicked and flew in 2 doctors. The verdict: I was pregnant with twins. The news hit me like thunder and sunlight mixed together. I remembered nights I used to cry in my childhood room, wondering if I'd ever be loved, ever be chosen, ever be called mommy. Now here I was, bearing royalty. Kingston cried when I told him. "God doubled it because you never gave up," he said. We held each other, both speechless. Mama Nneka shouted praises for hours, dancing with her walking stick. That same day, Pamela was seen fighting a woman in a local market over Gary and unpaid debt. The video went viral. Comments poured in from Slay Queen to Street Queen. Still, I didn't laugh. Instead, I prayed for her. I remembered how bitterness almost swallowed me too. When the enemy loses grip, he tries to infect others. But I was done bleeding. I was done begging. My body was now a home for joy, twice over. Kingston promised we would never let our children feel the emptiness we once carried. They will grow up in love, not survival, he said. And just like that, our fairy tale prepared for its next chapter. The naming ceremony was like a national event. Dignitaries arrived in convoys. Newspapers called them the miracle twins of Umuahia. We named them Chizaram and Ebubeki. God answered me and glory of God. My heart nearly exploded watching Kingston cradle both boys in his arms. He looked at me, eyes soft. "You made me a man," he whispered. "You made me a king before the world saw it." The palace, as we now called our home, was filled with music, laughter, and dancing. Even people who once mocked me sent gifts and apologies. God had written my story in a language no enemy could translate. That evening, Kingston gave me another surprise, a book. "Your story," he said. I flipped it open to find the first chapter titled "The Girl Who Gave 500 Nigerian Nairas." It was my biography, published by a major press. He had hired ghostwriters to document my journey and pledged proceeds to fund orphanages. I was stunned. "You think I'm special?" I asked. He kissed my forehead. "You're not just special, you're legendary." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. I saw myself not as a victim, but as a vessel, not forgotten, but anointed. Years passed, but our story never faded. We became a symbol, proof that dignity still had value, that love, real love, could rise from ruins. We started a foundation for betrayed women, helped abandoned girls start businesses, sponsored education for orphans. Every 500 Nigerian Nairas donation we received, we called seeds of destiny. People who once whispered behind my back now named their daughters after me. My grandmother lived to see the twins start school before she passed in her sleep, smiling. We buried her like the queen she was, with 500 women singing her praises. Pamela eventually moved to ABA, selling second-hand clothes, bitter and forgotten. Jahid? Rumors say he tried to scam a politician and disappeared after being chased out of town. No one really cared anymore. They were footnotes in a chapter that no longer needed them. I never visited my father again. Some ghosts don't need confronting. They fade on their own. As for Kingston and me, we never stopped celebrating the simple things. Watching the twins sleep, making suya on Friday nights, dancing barefoot in our garden under moonlight. Our riches didn't define us. Love did. One day I was invited to speak at a women's summit in Abuja. Over 5,000 women gathered, and I stood before them, once the girl nobody believed in, now the keynote speaker. I wore a simple white gown, no jewelry, no makeup. I held up a worn 500 Nigerian Nairas note. This, I said, was the price of my destiny. Not because it had value, but because I gave it with a pure heart. The crowd erupted, tears, claps. I shared how pain prepared me, how betrayal sharpened me, how love found me not when I was looking for a man, but when I was simply being kind. I saw women in the audience wiping tears, nodding, some hugging each other. Kingston watched from the front row, holding our sons. It hit me then. This was bigger than me. This was legacy. My story wasn't just about a fiancé who cheated or a stepsister who lied. It was about every woman who ever felt invisible. I ended the speech with the words, "If they bury you in shame, rise in power. If they mock you in pain, laugh in purpose. And if they betray you, let it be the proof that your crown is near." The next morning, a presidential convoy arrived at our house. I thought it was a prank, but the president herself stepped out and asked to see me. "You changed this nation with your story," she said. "We want you as our women and youth development ambassador." I almost fainted. From being mocked in the compound to being invited to the presidential villa, I accepted, not for pride, but for the girls whose voices had been stolen. I traveled across states, shared stages with world leaders, and even addressed the UN General Assembly. But every time someone asked what started it all, I told them about a market, a rainy day, and a 500 Nigerian Nairas note. Kingston always said, "God hides kings in dirty clothes and hides queens in broken homes." I believed him now more than ever. Our twins grew up watching their mother change the world, and their father stayed gentle in a world that glorifies pride. That balance kept our home grounded. One day, my son asked me, "Mommy, what's betrayal?" I smiled and said, "Something that happens before God shows you who you really are." He nodded. And that night, I wrote those words in gold ink on the last page of my book. The book became a global bestseller, from 500 Nigerian Nairas to forever. It was adapted into a film, winning international awards. They asked who would play me. I chose a rising actress from Enugu who once messaged me, saying my story stopped her from ending her life. That's when I knew I wasn't just a survivor, I was someone's hope. We built shelters for women escaping toxic marriages. One of the rescued girls said, "I came here because I heard if you give love, you'll find royalty." That line became our motto. Kingston and I hosted annual banquets for the broken, not politicians or celebrities, just ordinary people with extraordinary scars. Pamela once tried to sneak in, but the gatekeepers recognized her. "You don't qualify," they said. It wasn't meant to hurt, but to protect. We knew healing required boundaries. We prayed for her still, but her journey was hers. Mine had moved on. I learned forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Some people are lessons, not lifelines. Kingston said, "Your palace must have guards." I agreed. I wasn't that fragile girl anymore. I was a crowned queen, not just by marriage, but by fire, by pain, and by purpose. Years later, I returned to that compound where it all began, where I once slept hungry, cried myself to sleep, and watched my stepmother poison my father with lies. It was crumbling now, cracks in the walls, paint peeling, grass overtaking the gate. Pamela's childhood drawings still on the corridor walls faded. I didn't go in. I just stood outside, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Not for anyone, just to lay the memory to rest. A woman from the neighborhood saw me and gasped. "You came back?" she asked. I smiled. "Just passing through." She touched my hand. "You made us proud. You showed us it's possible." I thanked her, then walked away, not with bitterness, but with peace. Sometimes closure isn't found in confrontation. It's found in realizing you never needed their validation. Kingston waited in the car, smiling. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day they threw me away," I said. We drove off, not to a mansion, but to a quiet orphanage, where we would spend the weekend volunteering. Royalty isn't about power, it's about service. That's how we kept the crown intact, by keeping our knees bent in gratitude and our hearts open to strangers. At age 50, I published my second book, Loved by a King in Disguise. It wasn't about Kingston, it was about God, the ultimate king who hid in my storms, showed up in my lowest days, and disguised my biggest blessings as tragedies. I told the world with that message, He doesn't always come in lightning. Sometimes he comes as a homeless man needing 500 Nigerian Nairas. People called me Mama Sunshine, not because I was perfect, but because I rose after every storm. Kingston and I renewed our vows in a quiet garden with only our sons, their wives, and our grandkids. I wore the same lace I had bought years ago when I was supposed to marry Jide, but now it fit differently, not just on my body, but on my soul. Pamela sent a letter once apologizing. I forgave her, not because she changed, but because I had. Forgiveness was freedom. My father died quietly. I attended the funeral, left a flower on his casket, and walked away. No speeches, no drama. Some things die without fanfare, and some women rise without applause. But me, I got both, and I gave the glory back to the one who never left, even when the world did. Now I sit on my balcony, watching the sunset pour gold across the sky. My grandkids play in the yard, their laughter sweeter than music. Kingston walks out with 2 mugs of tea, still calling me Sunshine like it's our first day. We sit in silence, no need for words. We've lived the kind of life movies can't fully capture. We've seen betrayal turn to beauty, scarcity to royalty. We didn't just survive, we reigned. I often wonder, what if I hadn't given him that 500 Nigerian Nairas? What if I had let bitterness blind me? What if I had believed a lie that I was unworthy of love? But God doesn't need many chances. Just one seed, one moment, one yes, I gave it, and in return he gave me the kingdom. So if you're reading this broken and bruised, betrayed and buried, hear me loud. Your pain is not the end. It's the audition for something greater, for someone greater. Your crown is not lost, it's just delayed. And the king is coming, maybe in rags, maybe in disguise. But when he comes, he'll call you queen, just like Kingston called me, and everything you lost will bow, because royalty never begs, it reigns.